will now be escorted into the commemoration by members of Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Bloomfield, Director, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
Speaker Johnson, Leader Jeffries, members of Congress, Secretary Lutnick, members of the administration, members of the council, members of the diplomatic corps, friends of the museum, and above all, our cherished Holocaust survivors. Welcome to the 2026 Days of Remembrance commemoration. Today, as we pay tribute to all the Americans who fought in World War II, I want to single out Roddy Edmonds of Tennessee, a 25-year-old master sergeant in the 106th Infantry Division who was captured in the Battle of the Bulge and sent to Stalag 9A. A month later, on January 27, 1945, Roddy, who was the highest-ranking non-commissioned officer in the POW camp, was ordered by the Germans to separate the Jewish POWs. In response, Roddy ordered all 1,200 American prisoners of war to stand together. A furious Nazi yelled, "They could not possibly all be Jews." And Roddy responded with 4 simple words: "We are all Jews." The Nazi put a gun to his head, but Roddy stood his ground, and 200 Jewish lives were saved that momentous day. Roddy Edmonds passed away in 1985, but thankfully his stunning example of courage and defiance was recognized by President Trump, who bestowed upon him the Medal of Honor posthumously. Now, there's one more thing that's important to say about the day Roddy declared, "We are all Jews," because on that same day that he was boldly asserting the dignity of all individuals, Auschwitz was being liberated. Auschwitz, where 1 million Jews were killed, as well as thousands of Poles, Roma, and others. So today, as we remember what happened at Auschwitz, at Stalag 9A, and so many other places, we are reminded of the few, the very few, who bravely stood in solidarity with the Jews. This is an urgent lesson for today with anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial rampant. Another much-needed lesson of the Holocaust is that once hate is unleashed, it infects all of society. As Roddy Edmonds reminds us, it is vital that we all stand together and affirm our shared humanity.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand if you are able for the presentation of the flags of the United States Army Liberating Divisions. Landsberg. Second Infantry Division, Leipzig-Schönefeld and Sperrgau. 82nd Airborne Division, Verblin. 4th Infantry Division, Dachau Subcamps. 20th Armored Division, Dachau. 8th Infantry Division, Verblin. 14th Armored Division, Dachau Subcamps. 26th Infantry Division, Gusen. 12th Armored Division, Landsberg. 29th Infantry Division, Dinslaken. 11th Armored Division, Gusen and Mauthausen. 30th Infantry Division, Weferlingen. 10th Armored Division, Landsberg. 36th Infantry Division, Kaufering Camps. 9th Armored Division, Falkenau an der Eger. 42nd Infantry Division, Dachau. 8th Armored Division, Halberstadt-Zwieberge. 45th Infantry Division, Dachau. 6th Armored Division, Buchenwald. 63rd Infantry Division, Kaufering Camps. 4th Armored Division, Ohrdruf. 65th Infantry Division, Flossenburg Subcamp. 3rd Armored Division, Dora Mittelbau. 69th Infantry Division, Leipzig-Tekla. 104th Infantry Division, Dora Mittelbau. 71st Infantry Division, Gunskirchen. 103rd Infantry Division, Landsberg. 80th Infantry Division, Buchenwald and Ebensee. 99th Infantry Division, Dachau Subcamps. 83rd Infantry Division, Langenstein. 95th Infantry Division, Werl. 84th Infantry Division, Allem and Salzwedel. 90th Infantry Division, Flossenburg. 86th Infantry Division, Attendorn. 89th Infantry Division, Ohrdruf. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing if you are able for the presentation of the national colors and the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right shoulder on.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Good morning to everyone, to the members of Congress, dignitaries, all of our distinguished guests, most importantly, the 30 survivors who are with us today. Welcome to the United States Capitol. It is good to see you all. It is our great honor to join you on this solemn occasion. We gather each year during these days of remembrance to honor the blessed memories of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who were viciously murdered in one of the darkest hours of human history. Today, we recommit to preserving their stories and the stories of countless other innocent victims who suffered the brutality of the Holocaust. Congress takes this mandate very seriously, as you know, and we also know that an annual ceremony is just not sufficient. The work of keeping these lives from being forgotten never truly ends, and we all know that. And that's why we're very grateful to the Holocaust Museum, Director Sarah Bloomfield, and all of their essential work to ensure this generation of Americans bears witness and always will. It's been said that the Holocaust is not merely a study in history, but a study in human nature. In the span of a few years, the world witnessed the grim display of man's worst impulses, but also our capacity for profound good and decency. We saw the good in the families who carved out hiding places beneath their floorboards. Families like the Strobos and the Mulders, who sheltered hundreds of Jewish refugees in their own homes at the risk of their own lives. We saw it in Malvina from Slovakia, who, with her mother and sisters, smuggled food and letters through the barbed wire of the Nazi concentration camp, just steps from their home. These portraits in courage and selflessness remind us that even in the darkest hour, light can always find a way through. And yet still, the Holocaust exists on such a scale that today we're often left with, frankly, more questions than answers. We know the questions well. How could this have happened? How did the greatest crime against humanity unfold in broad daylight before the eyes of neighbors and entire nations? And what brings a person to maim and murder children, to lead a mother and her infant to their certain death? Too often we've let these questions go unanswered, intoning a kind of condemnation that's become in some ways routine. It was incomprehensible, we hear. These were unthinkable atrocities. It's all true, but the real truth is that we must think about these things. We must try and comprehend it so that that evil can be directly confronted. We owe that to the survivors in this room and to future generations who hope to prevent such absolute evil from ever prevailing again. Today, the work is even more important than ever, not only because those who personally witness this tragedy grow fewer in number each year, but because denying and distorting the truth of the Holocaust has become something, once again, that is tolerated and in some cases even defended. On college campuses, leaders of once respectable institutions have excused hateful ideas as context. The flags of radical Islamic terrorist groups have become commonplace on campus quadrangles. And safe spaces are reserved not for the Jewish students threatened by physical violence on these campuses, but for those who chant from the river to the sea and long live Hamas. What's become quite clear is that a basic comprehension of history and geography is in short supply on America's college campuses. These are dangerous ideologies with dangerous consequences, and we cannot forget that. And we have to speak into this problem directly. As the memory of the Holocaust fades, I'm often reminded of the famous admonition of our great President Abraham Lincoln. And he said famously, "The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation becomes the philosophy of government in the next." And we know that that is true. And because it is true, it requires us to properly educate the next generation, to correct those who deny the facts of the Holocaust or October 7th, and protect our Jewish brothers and sisters. It means having the courage and the moral clarity to say that denying the Holocaust is not a difference of opinion, it is a lie, and it's a lie with serious consequences. And it means standing up for what's right and speaking out against what's wrong, even when those opinions, those facts, may not be as popular as they once were. We've seen what happens when good people stay silent in the face of evil, and this generation of leaders will not make that mistake again. No one understood this more than the man who we honor today, Benjamin Ferencz. As a war crimes investigator during World War II, Ben was among the first outsiders to witness and record the horrors of Nazi labor and concentration camps. One of his first experiences was at Buchenwald. He recalled in vivid detail the hungry reduced to scavenging for scraps, and the countless bodies that lay like firewood piled at the foot of furnaces that scattered that campus. In records that Nazis meticulously kept, he uncovered the horrific scale of the crimes. Recordings like this in folder 119, dated September 1939. It was written, over 33,000 Jewish men, women, and children murdered in just 2 days. That was the massacre at Babi Yar. Folder 84, March 1942. It said there, 91,000 individuals killed by Task Force D. Another folder, folder 111. It said 55,000 Jews murdered in only 10 weeks. It was folder after folder like this, the records, the extermination of hundreds of thousands of innocent lives, all recorded with bookkeeper-like precision. By the time Ben had finished, he had personally uncovered evidence of more than 1 million deaths. As the Nuremberg trials were reaching their conclusion, Ben went to his supervisor and pleaded to add just one more case. His persistence won out. At only 27 years of age, the youngest prosecutor at Nuremberg, Ben delivered the opening statement in what would become the largest murder trial in human history. But Ben's pursuit of justice did not end there. His work to investigate and prosecute these crimes led in no small part to the establishment of an international system of justice. And for the rest of his long life, all 103 blessed years of it, Ben worked just as tirelessly to protect the victims of atrocity and to defend the rule of law. Though Ben passed away 3 years ago, today the country he loved and served will bestow upon him the recognition he has long been due. The Congressional Gold Medal is the highest civilian honor that Congress can bestow upon anyone. And today we're proud to confer that great honor on Benjamin Ferencz for his life of servant leadership and his courage in the face of evil. Ben spent his life answering the hardest questions and facing the most difficult truths. And today, let us hope Ben's example can inspire all of us to do the same. To the Ferencz family, America will always remember your late beloved husband, father, grandfather. We will remember him as a true American hero. May God bless Ben's extraordinary legacy. May God bless the survivors among us, and may God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Lois Frankel, United States House Representative from the 22nd District of Florida.
Good morning. It is a profound honor to be here with Ben Ferencz's family, with my colleagues, the survivors, Sarah Bloomfeld, and of course all of you, as we award the Congressional Gold Medal, Congress's highest civilian honor, to Mr. Benjamin Ferencz. This bipartisan tribute reflects our shared commitment to justice, accountability, and the rule of law. As the grandmother to 2 Jewish grandchildren championing this medal, was deeply personal to me, and I thank Representatives Wilson and Senator Gillibrand for helping this along. And what a beautiful medal it is, and law, not war. And I'm grateful to Kip Hale and Ambassador Beth Van Schweik for helping lead this effort. Ben Ferenz was a beacon of hope in humanity's darkest hours. And I'm proud to say I was blessed to know him, and let me tell you, even when he was 100, he was as feisty as ever. He was my constituent in Delray Beach, Florida. He lived one of the most extraordinary lives of our time, defined by courage and justice and unshakable belief in humanity. He was born in 1920 to a poor Jewish family in what is now Romania. Ben came to America as an infant and grew up in New York's Hell Kitchen. His brilliance and determination carried him to Harvard Law School. And then during World War II, he served in the United States Army, fighting in Europe before documenting Nazi atrocities, witnessing horrors that would shape his life's mission. And as Mr. Speaker, thank you for your very articulate words. At just 27, with no courtroom experience, he became the chief prosecutor in Nuremberg trial, holding 22 Nazi officials accountable for murder of more than 1 million people, the largest murder trial in history, and every defendant was convicted. And then after the war, Ben devoted his life to justice, fighting for survivors, securing reparations, and championing the International Criminal Court so future war criminals would be held accountable. Until his passing at 103, he remained a tireless voice for peace, justice, and human dignity. Ben once said, "Nuremberg taught me that creating a world of tolerance and compassion would be an arduous task." And sadly, he was right. Nearly 80 years later, the principles he fought for are still under threat. Anti-Semitism, including Holocaust denial, is rising. Jewish communities pray behind armed guards. And just yesterday, Tel Aviv University reported that 2025 was the deadliest year for anti-Semitic violence in over 3 decades. So now we know that Ben's work is not finished. Now it is ours. By presenting this rare honor to his family, we do more than recognize his extraordinary life. We renew our commitment to his mission, a world rooted in justice, tolerance, and compassion. May Ben's memory be a blessing. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Joe Wilson, United States House Representative from the 2nd District of South Carolina.
Ladies and gentlemen, promoting Days of Remembrance. As a lead sponsor of the bipartisan legislation with Congresswoman Frankel, this legislation recognizes the tremendous life and accomplishments of Benjamin Ferenz. I'm grateful to be here today. His service perpetually embodies the ideals of service, liberty, and justice in pursuit of rule of law. As myself, the son of a World War II Flying Tiger who served in China, and father of 4 sons who have served in the Middle East in the global war on terrorism, I especially appreciate his service. Sergeant Ferenz actually began his service as a sergeant of infantry in the Army with heroic service as anti-aircraft artillery and war crimes divisions. Next, he tirelessly pursued justice for the victims of Nazi genocidal mass murders as prosecutor in Nuremberg. Benjamin Ferenz uncovered a network of perpetrators which included doctors, lawyers, judges, generals, and industrialists. This led to the successful prosecution of SS murder squads directly responsible for the genocide of over 1 million individuals. All 22 defendants were charged and convicted. In honoring Benjamin Ferenz today, we reaffirm our shared commitment, never again. As chairman of the Helsinki Commission in the spirit of never again, I chaired a hearing at the Nuremberg courthouse last year focusing on the locations of war criminal Putin's mass murders I saw at Bucha, Ukraine, and also the Hamas mass murders I saw at the Israeli Music Festival. Ben's legacy represents the best of America, and his memory will be forever a blessing. Thank you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Kirsten Gillibrand, United States Senator from New York.
I am so honored to be here today to recognize the life and legacy of Benjamin Ferencz. Mr. Ferencz truly represents the best of humanity. He devoted his life to the unwavering pursuit of justice. As a soldier, as a Nuremberg trials prosecutor, and finally, as a lifelong advocate for peace. As a war crimes investigator during World War II, Mr. Ferencz was one of the first outside witnesses to document the atrocities of the Holocaust. He came face to face with evil, recalling the fact that he had, quote, peered into hell. A lesser person might have looked away, but Ben Ferencz looked harder. At just 27 years old, with no previous trial experience, and despite pressure to conclude the Nuremberg proceedings, Mr. Ferencz convinced his superior to allow him to take on the notorious Einsatzgruppen case. During the trial, he meticulously laid out irrefutable evidence of these defendants' murders, as many as 1 million Jews and other individuals, using SS reports that he had collected during his time as an investigator. His case was airtight. Historians have called the Einsatzgruppen trial the biggest murder trial in history. And 27-year-old Ben Ferencz successfully tried the case and convicted every defendant. But he didn't stop there. Mr. Ferencz spent the next 7 decades fighting to make sure that what he had witnessed could never happen again. He fought for the compensation of victims and survivors of the Holocaust and dedicated his life to fighting for justice through international criminal law. He used to say that his motto was simple: law, not war. Mr. Ferencz was a tremendous force for good, a fierce New Yorker with a heart of gold and a backbone of steel, a man who saw the worst of humanity and spent the better part of a century fighting for the best of it. I was proud to serve as the lead senator on this bill to award Mr. Ferencz the Congressional Gold Medal. And I am so grateful that today, at long last, Congress is honoring the tremendous service to our nation and his efforts in pursuit of justice. It's safe to say that the world is a more just place because of Mr. Ferencz. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic Leader of the United States House of Representatives.
Good morning. To Speaker Johnson, my colleagues in Congress, distinguished guests, and all those assembled for this incredibly important event, thank you for your presence. Let me especially acknowledge Andrew, Irene, Henry, Ray, and all of the survivors who are here. Thank you for your resilience, for your courage, and for continuing to teach and inspire us into action. Almost 45 years ago, Congress established the Days of Remembrance and enshrined into law the moral necessity to remember and honor the lives of the 6 million Jews brutally murdered during the Holocaust. Survivor, author, and humanitarian Elie Wiesel reminded us when accepting his Nobel Peace Prize that we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. It's important that we continue to take a side. We gather on Yom HaShoah, a sacred day on the Jewish calendar designed for collective memory, a day that compels us to never forget and to do everything that we can to ensure that never again unequivocally means never again. And we have no other moral choice because we know the violent and deadly history and reality of anti-Semitism. Jewish life has included, for thousands of years, pain, pogroms, persecution, prejudice, expulsions, the terrorist attack on October 7th, and the Holocaust. Never again must always mean never again. This week, Jewish communities across the world read a double Torah portion. In it, God gives instructions for the purification of skin ailments that were afflicting some of the Israelites. The Torah describes the compassionate role of the priests in order to help the suffering heal and return to society. The people are separated, but a society anchored in humanity required hands-on care. That is why the priest has to be physically present with the sick. During the Holocaust, Jews were isolated, dehumanized, and abandoned, while others stood by, indifferent to their struggle and to their suffering. The Torah implores us never to idly stand by while others are suffering. And in this portion, it instructs us to adopt the same compassion and urgency of the priest, powerfully reminding us that it is always our duty to intervene. It is therefore only fitting that today we recognize the extraordinary Benjamin Ferencz with the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor bestowed to any civilian by the United States Congress. Escaping persecution at a young age, Ben found refuge in New York City and bravely served America in uniform during World War II. He fled persecution from anti-Semitism, then made it his life's mission to patriotically serve America, fight the evil Nazi regime, and protect Jews around the world. He heeded the call of this week's Torah portion. After his military service, he was sent to Europe for the Nuremberg trials, becoming the chief prosecutor of the biggest murder trial in world history. Speaking to the court soon after the Holocaust in September of 1947, when he was just 27 years old, Mr. Ferencz said, "The case we present is a plea of humanity," adding that if these men, the Nazis, be immune, then law has lost its meaning, and man must forever live in fear. If laws and government don't protect everyone, we stay silent in the face of inhumane oppression, then hatred, violence, and anti-Semitism will grow. Ben was relentless in his pursuit of justice and accountability. He carried the weight of freedom on his heroic and fearless and brilliant shoulders. And he represents the best of who we are as Americans. As we honor his service, honor the survivors, and the blessed memory of those who were tragically lost, we recommit to taking action together. And the effort to combat anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial cannot be a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. It is an American issue. And we must all commit to crushing anti-Semitism, burying it in the ground, and making sure that it never rises again. God bless each and every one of you. God bless our survivors, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Democratic Leader of the United States Senate.
Good morning. This morning we gather here in remembrance and observance of Yom HaShoah. My parents ensured I would never forget what happened to my great-grandmother and her whole family when the Nazis occupied their town in Galicia in 1941. The SS asked the Jews of that community, Chortkiv, to gather in the town square. About 200 people, 200 Jews in that town. The SS then forced my grandmother to bring her greater family of over 35, from ages 80s to 3 months, to her porch. The Nazis said, "You're coming with us." She said, "We will not leave." And they machine-gunned every one of them down. Today, during Yom HaShoah, we remember them and the 6 million other Jews who perished in the Holocaust. We renew our solemn pledge, never again. We will also remember those who stood up for human dignity 8 decades ago. That is why we today honor, with the highest civilian award Congress can bestow, the Congressional Gold Medal, the great New Yorker Benjamin Ferencz. May his memory be a blessing. His family escaped anti-Semitic persecution in Hungary when he was a child in the 20s. He went from living in a basement tenement on the Lower East Side to becoming one of the United States' lead prosecutors at Nuremberg. At the age of just 27, he oversaw prosecution of the Nazis' mobile SS death squads that murdered more than 1 million people. A truly remarkable fight for justice. I helped champion the legislation, along with my colleague Senator Gillibrand and others, to give Ben Ferencz this award. Not only because he, without a doubt, deserved it, but also to demonstrate that Congress will never forget the lessons of the Holocaust. In his opening statement at Nuremberg, Ben Ferencz said of the Holocaust, "We cannot shut our eyes to a fact ominous and full of foreboding for all of mankind." We must continue to keep our eyes open today, at a time when anti-Semitism sadly runs rampant around the world once again. The responsibility falls on all of us. We must remember how the Holocaust happened, how too many stood silent in the face of evil, and how the death of democracy in Europe enabled the death of 6 million Jews. The poisons of fascism and anti-Semitism come from the same vial. The only antidote is to call out and condemn anti-Semitism wherever and whenever it rears its ugly head. That is why we will continue to keep our eyes open and to never, never forget. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Well, it is now my distinct honor and privilege to present the Congressional Gold Medal to the family members of Benjamin Ferencz. I will ask Leader Jeffries and the bill sponsors and Senator Ben's daughter, nephew, and niece to please join me in the front of the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Bloomfield, Director, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
I've been asked by Ben Ferenz's son, Don Ferenz, to read his acceptance letter on his behalf, and this is what Don wrote. On behalf of my beloved parents of blessed memory and our entire family, some of whom are here today, I'd like to express our heartfelt thanks to all those responsible for today's exceptional award, and above all, to the time-honored American traditions of inclusion and opportunity which made it possible. My dad came to the United States as part of those huddled masses yearning to be breathe free, and his life exemplified that it's not so much where you come from as where you're going that counts. Though he never saw the gold medal itself, he knew that it had been officially authorized, for which he was profoundly grateful. Recalling his legacy here today is altogether fitting, as he considered his work on behalf of Holocaust victims to be the most important work of his life. As a lawyer, he looked to strengthening the rule of law as a tool in helping to bring the world closer to making the cry of never again a reality for all people everywhere. He knew that the United States was founded on the principle that freedom from oppression is best guaranteed by effectively enforced equal justice under law, and like countless others around the world, he strongly believed that the same principle should apply globally to provide universal protections from unaccountable power. He often quoted former President Dwight Eisenhower, who in 1958 warned that, quote, in a very real sense, the world no longer has a choice between force and law. If civilization is to survive, it must choose the rule of law. He shortened that message down to 3 simple words that he felt we could all remember: law, not war, as the medal depicts. On a personal note, growing up as kids at the dinner table, my dad had a habit of asking each of his 4 children what they had done for mankind that day. He encouraged us not just to leave a place the way we found it, but rather to leave it the way we would like to have found it. And he never stopped trying to do that himself. During the earliest stages of the legislative process leading to today's award, he was asked to designate someone to accept it if he were no longer with us. I'm honored and grateful that he appointed me to do that. Thanks, Pop, for everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey L. Miller, Chairman of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
Thank you, Speaker Johnson, Leader Schumer, Leader Jeffries, and members of Congress for honoring Ben Ferenz and joining this ceremony. Your presence means so much to all of us. I'm also gratified to stand before Secretary Lutnick and other members of the administration, members of the Council, the Diplomatic Corps, guests and friends, and most especially our cherished Holocaust survivors. The past warns us, the present demands courage and action. I want to begin by expressing the deep honor I feel in standing before you today as Chairman of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council. For me, this responsibility is not simply a title. It is a solemn duty to memory, to truth, and to ensuring that the darkest chapter in human history is never forgotten and never repeated. I'm profoundly grateful to President Trump for placing his trust in me with this responsibility, a charge that reflects a clear recognition that the fight against anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial is one of the defining moral challenges of our time. Let me be clear. The Jewish people and the state of Israel have never had a greater friend than President Trump. President Trump acted decisively to bring our hostages home, and vigorously pushes back against the anti-Semitism we are witnessing here in the United States. The Jewish people owe President Trump a lifetime of gratitude. Over the past several years, all of us have watched with deep concern as anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial have resurfaced here in disturbing ways, including on college campuses where Jewish students have too often faced intimidation, harassment, and hostility simply for who they are. I am the proud father of 2 beautiful Jewish daughters, and like so many Jewish families in this country, I have watched with disbelief as they have had to confront anti-Semitism at their universities, something I never imagined our children would face here in the United States of America. That is why this moment demands leadership, moral clarity, and action. The commitment to confronting anti-Semitism and standing firmly with the Jewish community sends an essential message that hatred of any kind will not be tolerated in our country. But the truth is this: the challenge before us is far greater than any one administration, any one institution, or any one individual. Because the lessons of the Holocaust are not only about the past, they're about the responsibilities of free people in every generation. 85 years ago, the Holocaust began. In June 1941, the Nazi forces invaded the Soviet Union. They systematically shot those they deemed enemies: political opponents, Roma, and above all, Jews. Millions of Jews. We had lived in these lands for centuries. We'd endured anti-Semitism, even violent and deadly anti-Semitism, but nothing like this. The Holocaust did not begin with gas chambers, it began with bullets. And long before that, with words, with lies, with propaganda, with conspiracy theories. It began when we were defined as the enemy, when we were stripped of our humanity, when a society was taught to see us not as neighbors, but as a threat. And once that idea took hold, everything else became possible. German soldiers, SS units, and ordinary police went town to town rounding up Jews, forcing them to march, often in front of their neighbors, to forests and clearings where they were executed. Men, women, children. By December 1941, in just 6 months, the Germans, with the help of local collaborators, had murdered as many as 800,000 Jews. 6 months. That same month, Nazi leadership formalized their plan to murder every Jew in Europe. 11 million people from Ireland to Turkey, what they called the final solution. And at that very moment, another event shook the world: attack on Pearl Harbor. America entered the war. Our soldiers would land in Europe, in Italy, and then on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day in 1944. On that day, General Dwight D. Eisenhower told his troops, "The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you." He spoke those words already aware of reports of atrocities against Jews, though even then, the full scale was unimaginable. 10 months later, when Allied forces liberated Nazi camps, Eisenhower insisted on seeing the evidence himself. After visiting Ohrdruf, he wrote, "The things I saw beggar description. The visual evidence of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality were overpowering." He understood something profoundly important, that one day people might try to deny these crimes ever happened. And today, that warning has become reality. Holocaust denial, once unthinkable, has spread, particularly online. One recent study shows that half of American youth have encountered denial. At the same time, anti-Semitism has returned, not quietly, but openly. The horrors we witnessed on October 7th were not simply an attack on Israel. They were a brutal reminder of what happens when hatred of Jews is allowed to go unchecked. On that day, we witnessed barbarism. Families were hunted down in their homes. Innocent people were burned alive. Women were brutalized. Children were murdered. And the men who carried out these atrocities celebrated their cruelty as they did it. It was a chilling reminder that the oldest hatred in human history is not buried in the past. It is still with us today. Just recently, Jews have been killed in cities as far away as Manchester and Bondi Beach, and as close to home as Boulder, Pittsburgh, and even here in our nation's capital. Families are afraid to wear a Star of David in public. And we see people in the streets of American and European cities openly celebrating acts of terror against Jews. Let us be clear. Anti-Semitism is not just a Jewish problem, it is a threat to the very foundations of free society. History teaches us that where anti-Semitism is allowed to flourish, attacks on liberty and democracy soon follow. The Holocaust demonstrates that hate began with the Jews, but did not end with the Jews. That lesson could not be more urgent today. And that is why the work of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum matters so deeply. To remember, to educate, to confront denial, to warn. This year, as our nation approaches the 250th anniversary of its founding, we remember those who fought to defeat tyranny and the leadership that made victory possible. We remember the soldiers who liberated the camps. We remember the survivors who rebuilt their lives and strengthened this country. And we remember the Holocaust stands as the most powerful reminder that the unthinkable is always possible, which is why complacency is not an option. Not in the face of denial, not in the face of anti-Semitism, not now. On this day of Yom HaShoah, we join millions around the world to remember the 6 million men, women, and children murdered simply because they were Jewish. But here in the United States Capitol, we must do more than remember. We must act, we must speak, we must lead. We owe that to the victims, we owe it to the survivors, and most importantly, we owe it to our children, because the responsibility now rests with us. Anti-Semitism has once again shown its face in our time with shocking boldness. Let the world hear this clearly. We will confront it, we will expose it, and we will defeat it, because the promise of never again is not negotiable. For as long as the museum stands, as long as the truth of the Holocaust is taught, and as long as the people of conscience refuse to surrender a hatred, the fortress of anti-Semitism will find that they have not awakened our fear, but our unbreakable will and our determination to never, ever surrender in the fight against evil. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Howard Lutnick, United States Secretary of Commerce.
I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to the survivors of the Holocaust who honor us today with their presence. Your lives of resilience in the face of immense, unspeakable evil and loss during civilization's darkest hour will forever remain a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. Speaker Johnson, Leader Jeffries, members of Congress and the Senate, I am honored to join you here today for this vital and important day of remembrance. I would also like to thank the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum for the invitation to speak on this solemn occasion, because the museum serves the vital civic purpose to ensure that current and future generations of Americans can never forget the lessons of the Holocaust. I want us all to think back where we were just a year ago when we were together. 20 innocent people were held hostage underground in Gaza, and many families were suffering, hoping to bury the remains of their loved ones. Amazingly, on October 13th, 2025, President Trump brought them home. No one thought it was possible, but time and again, President Trump has shown through action, not just words, but bold action, that he is the greatest friend of the Jewish people. Last year, I had the honor and privilege to represent the United States at the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau with my friend, Steve Witkoff. The experience of witnessing that symbol of unchecked atrocity and depravity, wrought on an industrial scale, was pulverizing and incredibly moving. It left an indelible impression upon my wife and me, as it has from people all over the world who had visited that memorial, to the 1.1 million lives exterminated at the hands of the greatest evil of our generation. The stories of the victims of Auschwitz remind me that behind the brutal and horrific statistics are people of flesh and blood who, even in the face of incomprehensible suffering, do not let it and will not let it define them. People who carry the memories of family members the world never knew, but they will keep alive and always remember. People who, over eight decades, stand triumphant over a regime that, owing to the perseverance, sacrifice, and valor of the greatest generation, denied the objective of total annihilation and abject despair. But we all know that evil's reign did not cease in 1945. 56 years later, in 2001, the United States faced this evil again, when terrorists killed thousands of innocent Americans. Among those murdered that day was my brother Gary. He was 36. My best friend Doug, who was 39, and 656 other people I worked with at my company, my former company, Cantor Fitzgerald. I lost family, I lost my friends, I lost nearly everyone I worked with in New York City. But like many of my fellow Americans, we decided to rebuild from the ground up, to honor their legacies, to honor patriotism, and to honor courage. The Americans who died on 9/11 share a common, tragic heritage with those who perished at the hands of other evil regimes that similarly rejected the equal dignity and value of human life. Both groups of the fallen are made up of common heroes whose memory on earth would be lost were it not for determined effort by organizations like the Holocaust Memorial Museum to keep their legacy alive and ensure that the refrain never again echoes for generations to come. We gather this morning to remember the lives extinguished by violent oppressors, and at the same time, to remember the stories of courage that sustained both those who bore their final days in captivity and those who survived as witness of liberation in the face of unspeakable evil. Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. We are here because the victims of the Holocaust continue to remind us that apathy must be overcome by meaning, neglect supplanted by remembrance, and indifference surmounted by love. Today and always, we continue to honor the memory and legacy of those who perished in and survived the Holocaust. by ensuring their stories and sacrifices remain an enduring symbol of the triumph of light over darkness and the perseverance of human will. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you and to join you on this solemn occasion. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a museum leadership program has included more than 72,000 U.S. military members. Through examination of the Holocaust, they gain insight into their own professional and individual responsibilities. The candlelighters are members of the United States Army 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard.
I remember.
I'm Specialist Brandon Johnson. I remember.
I am Specialist Coolberth. I remember. I am Private Caleb Mabry. I remember.
I am Private Jacory Gilmore, and I remember.
I'm Specialist Santos, and I remember.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have more than 25 Holocaust survivors with us today. And now some will share memorial reflections.
I'm Captain Andrew Jampoler, United States Navy, retired. I was born January 1942 in Nazi-occupied Lvov in eastern Poland. Our family needed to flee that city to survive, and we obtained false baptismal and marriage certificates from a brave local priest, Father Joseph Zafran. And protected by these documents, my mother, my grandmother, my father, and I fled to Warsaw, where we thought we could hide more successfully than Lvov. My father, whose image I hold in front of you now, was a music student at the conservatory in Lvov. In Warsaw, he was found by a friend of his. Fearing disclosure. My grandmother, his mother, told him to run and hide. We never saw him again. His memory I honor today. For my protection, my mother and grandmother, now fearful of our safety in Warsaw, left me on the steps of a church, a few weeks of age. And from that church, I was taken by a family of Poles, the Matysiaks, to be their child. They took me to their home in Lublin and raised me for the first 4 years of my life as their son. At war's end, my grandmother mysteriously appeared, magically appeared, and persuaded them to give me back, explaining that surely I would be better off growing up in the United States, where we had immigration papers, than being raised in Russian-occupied Eastern Poland. It has been more than 80 years since war's end. None of us know what happened to my father, whose memory I honor today. Thank you.
My name is Irene Weiss. In May 1944, I was deported with my parents and 5 siblings to Auschwitz-Birkenau. I was 13 years old. Upon arrival on the platform, my older sister and I were separated from the rest of the family. Unknown to us, that moment of separation was captured in a photograph taken by Nazi officials and published years later in what is known as the Auschwitz album. The photo in the album documents the arrival of the Hungarian transport. It shows a process of selection and separation of families. My older sister and I were forced labor, while the women and children and sick and elderly were selected to be killed. This photo shows my mother and 2 little brothers sitting in a grove near a gas chamber and crematorium. Soon after this photo was taken, everyone in this picture, including my family, were murdered in the gas chamber. Some survivors don't know how their families were murdered. This photo makes it clear what happened to my mother and 2 little brothers, a devastating reality that my mind refused to accept. I remember my mother, Leah, and my brother, Reuben and Gerson. Thank you.
My name is Henry Weil. My idyllic childhood in Vienna was disrupted when Nazi Germany annexed Austria. As soldiers marched in, I watched tears stream down my mother's face. She knew what this meant to us because we were Jewish. My father began preparing to immigrate to the United States. Someone by the name of Mr. Rice of Massachusetts provided my family with an affidavit declaring that he would take financial responsibility for us when we came to the United States. Without this selfish act of kindness by a total stranger, we would never have been able to leave Vienna. We arrived in New York a few weeks after World War II began. We worried about our family that remained in Europe. I would accompany my father to the post office to send care packages to his sister, Wilma. I do not know if she ever received them. It took time to learn the fate of my aunt, but I remember that day clearly. While driving through Vineland, New Jersey, years after the war, we stopped at a farm owned by Jewish refugees. My father went in to purchase some fresh eggs, and when he returned to the car, he was crying. The owner had been in prison with my Aunt Wilma, my father's sister, in a concentration camp. She shared that one of the Nazi guards gave his sister a poison pill shortly before she was to be taken to the gas chamber. It pains me that I don't have a photograph of my Aunt Wilma. Still, I remember her. Please stand with me, if you're able, to join me in reciting the Kaddish for the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabo. B'yomod dibro chirusei v'yamlich malchusei b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chay beis Yisrael ba'golo v'zman korev v'yimeru amen. Yehei shmei rabo mevorach leolam omei omayo. Yisborach v'yishtabach v'yispoar v'yisromam v'yisnasei v'yishadar v'yisalev v'yisalol Shemei Kudisho Berechu, Liedo min kol birchoso tush birchoso benechemoso damiron biolmo bi'emeru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabo min Shemayo v'chayim olenu v'al kol Yisrael bi'emeru amen. Osei Shalom bimromov hu yaseh Shalom olenu v'al kol Yisrael bi'emeru amen. Please remain standing as Cantor Joel Listerman chants the traditional prayer for the souls of the dead, the El Male Rachamim. I invite you to hold high the photos that are on your seats. Together we honor their lives and we remember them.
El Male Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Ametzeh Menucha Nachona Ale kanefei hashechina Mamalad doshim torim Gezor harakia Mirim Omazehirim Kol haneshamod shel milyonei shel מיליוני היהודים, חללי השואה באירופה, שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו ושנספו על קידוש השם. בידי המרצחים הגרמנים ועוזריהם משאר העמים ימח שמם. באושוויץ, טרבלינקה, מיידנק, מאוטהאוזן, ברגן-בלזן, סוביבור ובשאר המחנות השמדה. שלחו לעולם ובעבור שכל הקהל מתפלל לעילוי נשמותיהם. לכן הבעל הרחמים, לכן הבעל הרחמים יסתיר להם בצתר כנפיו לעולמים. וישרור בצור חיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם בגליל תהא מנוחתם. ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימין, ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים, ונאמר אמן, אמן.
Please be seated.
My name is Ray Goldfarb. My mother and I escaped the ghetto in Głęboki, Poland, and joined a group of partisans in a nearby forest. Through Gentile friends, my mother secured a gun. This was our ticket into the partisan group. My mother became their cook, and I her assistant. I was 11. It is very important to me that people understand that despite great obstacles, many young Jewish resistors fought heroically, including those who saved my life and my mother's. Like all the resistors, they fought for Jewish lives and dignity and remain an example for all time of Jewish determination and resilience. The partisan hymn was written by 21-year-old Hirsch Glick in the Vilna ghetto a year before he was killed. The continued refrain, "We are here, mir seinen do," we are here, reminds us
that this is a song of bravery and hope for the future. Even if it would not be their future, it was written for them and for us. Never forget it was written for us, because they may not be here, but we are here. Wir seien da. Please stand if you're able and join me for the singing of the Hymn of the Partisans by Cantor Joel Luckman in the retirement of the Division of Flags.
Ich käme, las du gehst dem letzten Weg. Hat seine Himmel bleier verstellen, bleier Tag. Kommen wird noch unser reusgewändter Show. Es wird abbeugten und unser Trott, wir seien da. Kommen wird noch unser reusgewändter Show. Es wird abbeugten unser Trott mit seinen Ohr. Never say this is the final road for you. The leaden skies may cover all the days of woe. As the hour that we long for is so near, how step without the message we are here. As the hour we long for is so near, how steps without the message we are still here. Sorgen ich käm, wo lass du gehst den letzten Weg. Folgt dem Himmel bei ein paar Tage, kommen noch unser reichsgewählter Schwur. Es wird abbeugten unser Trott, wir seien dort. Kommen noch unser reichsgewählter Schwur. Es wird abbeugten unser Trott, wir seien dort.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our program. Thank you for sharing our national commitment to Holocaust remembrance.